The US president has threatened a 200% tariff on pharmaceuticals, 10% tariffs on all goods imported into America, as well as the existing 50% steel and aluminium tax.
The government's decision to overturn an effective ban on American beef imports would appear to give Australia a chance to cut a deal on trade and tariffs with the US.
What happens when a single policy twist leaves $500 million of prime American beef stranded at Chinese ports? Overnight, ranchers from Texas to Nebraska find their feedlots bursting and prices collapsing, all while Australia and Russia swoop in to grab the business Washington spent decades building. On March 16th, Beijing quietly let nearly 1,000 U.S. meat export licenses expire, freezing up to $5 billion in trade in one weekend. Hours later, China slapped fresh 10% to 15% tariffs on another $21 billion worth of American farm goods, from soybeans to pork. Containers that should be on dinner plates across China are now stuck on ice, with nowhere to go. While American beef sits idle, Russia's meat giants, fresh off a record $1.7 billion in exports last year, are signing deals with Chinese buyers worth another $1 to $2 billion. In one swift move, Moscow captured a supply lined the U.S. cattle belt spent generations building. Is this the moment the American cattle belt becomes the next big casualty of the trade war? Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, we'll break down how railway routes, currency swaps, and razor-thin options could decide whether U.S. ranchers survive this squeeze. Cargo trackers show U.S. beef shipments to China have slowed to a trickle. Orders that used to clear feedlots every 48 hours now sit frozen, blocked by customs. The U.S. Meat Export Federation warns cold storage on the Gulf Coast is nearly maxed out. This was no sudden ambush. Earlier in March, Beijing warned it would expand tariffs on beef, dairy, and more, calling it a proportionate countermeasure. The result? That Nebraska ribeye now costs almost a third more than a Brazilian or Argentine cut sitting in the same freezer. Cattle futures fell 12% in just 8 trading days. Hay prices climbed, and ranchers had no choice but to keep animals on feed longer. By March 20th, USDA export logs showed sales to China had cratered below 60 metric tons, functionally zero for the world's second biggest beef buyer. And the politics? Brutal. Many Texas ranchers backed tough trade war talk. Now they're stuck watching Chinese buyers walk away just as branding season starts. Lawmakers from the plains want a rescue plan, but the Treasury fears any bailout could breach World Trade Organization rules. Meanwhile, Russia moves fast. Its agro-export agency says meat shipments surged 24% last year, with beef leading the charge. Chinese importers are locking in chilled Russian beef, zipping it in by rail through Man's-Holy in just 6 days. Payments settle in yuan and rubles, sidestepping U.S. banks and cutting transaction fees. Analysts say Russia could grab up to a fifth of China's imported beef market by early 2026 if U.S. licenses stay frozen, erasing decades of U.S. marketing in one tariff cycle. The fallout hits fast. March 20th, USDA data shows American beef sales to China are down to just 54 metric tons, compared to nearly 2,000 tons a week earlier. Contracts inked in January sit in limbo as Chinese customs block entry. Packers scramble for freezer space, while costs keep climbing. By March 27th, traders warn $5 billion worth of box beef is stranded, hammering processors' cash flow. Local auctions in Broken Bow, Nebraska report live steer bids dropped 12 cents a pound in 10 days, the worst slide since the pandemic shutdowns. The squeeze keeps tightening. USDA's January cold storage report showed frozen beef stocks were already up 4% before the China freeze-out even started. Now with grilling season looming, warehouses are packed and feedlots are overflowing. Each extra week on feed adds $30 to $40 per head, a cost ranchers can't carry forever. If China keeps its doors shut through July, the Texas Beef Council says break-even could flip negative by $300 per animal. For ranch families in Kansas and Nebraska, this is the worst margin squeeze since the 2012 drought. Except this time, there's no weather relief in sight. So the big question, can Washington find a way to pry open China's gates? Or is this the start of a seismic power shift in the global beef trade? Stay tuned. They said Russia could never crack the global beef market. Now Moscow's meat trains are rewriting the rules while American ranchers watch billions slip away. Russia's new rail corridor through Manzhouli is roaring. Chinese buyers, locking in year-long beef supply deals in rubles and yuan, now get their steaks at an 8-cent per pound discount compared to U.S. cuts. If that tap stays wide open, America's cattle belt could see $1.2 billion vanish to a rival that barely existed 5 years ago. U.S. feedlots are stuffed with unsold steaks. Meanwhile, Russia's barbecue is just heating up. By the end of 2024, Russian meat exports jumped 27% to 700,000 tons, worth a record $1.7 billion. China grabbed the biggest chunk, with beef shipments alone up 22% year over year, adding around $560 million to Russia's bottom line. Today, Moscow's AG ministry boasts an export basket that's 48% poultry, 37% pork, and a surging 14% beef, flipping its old oil playbook to one powered by protein. By mid-2025, that curve got steeper. Russia's outbound meat shipments hit 440,000 tons, up 30% over last year, with customs data showing most of it rolling straight into China. Giants like Miratorg and National Beef are loading chilled quarters onto a meat shuttle that cuts through Zabaikalsk and into Inner Mongolia. A single cold chain train hauling 830 tons of beef and ice cream made the Moscow to Chengdu run in just 15 days, slashing the old loop by 45 days and beating air freight by over $1,400 per ton. Freight brokers say this rail route lands a prime rib in Chengdu for about a third less than a Pacific reefer quote, giving Russian packers enough margin to stay aggressive even if the ruble wobbles. And there's more coming. The Kremlin is eyeing a $1.1 billion plan to double national beef output by 2027, a proposal that's already rattling American ranchers. If it's funded, today's short-term squeeze could cement a permanent shift, wiping out a $1.2 billion U.S. market in a single election cycle. Washington thought it had time. Moscow just showed a fortnight is plenty. Beijing, meanwhile, is working to make sure that gap never reopens. 2 years ago, U.S. beef held about 7% of China's import market. By late 2024, barely 5%. New plant registrations dried up. Tariffs bit deep. What does that mean on the grill? It means every 20th steak sizzling in Shanghai is American, where it used to be 1 in 4. Restaurants feel it first. In April, Home Plate Barbecue and a chain of Beijing steakhouses ditched U.S. brisket for Australian cuts that come in 40% cheaper once duties land. Diners barely noticed, except when the check arrived. Price is just one lever. China's cranking up production too. USDA's latest report says U.S. beef output will hit a record 7.7 million tons in 2024, up 2.7% as the herd grows and new feedlots come online. It sounds small, but that's enough extra supply to erase demand for nearly 200,000 tons of imports. Exactly what Washington's fighting to hold on to. The new Zabaikalsk Xinjiang cold chain rail cuts shipping time to under a week and slashes costs by a third. Cheaper Aussie beef squeezes U.S. packers even harder. Falling American exports justify China's bigger local investments. Rising Chinese production keeps shrinking U.S. margins. By next Lunar New Year, U.S. beef could be a nostalgic luxury, more memory than staple. Winning back market share won't come from tariff talks alone. It needs a full reset of how America feeds Asia's fastest-learning carnivores. The tariff roller coaster proves it. Beijing's duties swung from a record 147% in April to 32% after a May truce. One memo can shut that door again overnight. U.S. ranchers no time short. Their share has dropped to just 5% of China's imports, down from 7% 2 years ago. What used to be a premium cut is now just an indulgence, but only when prices align. And that gap keeps widening. Meanwhile, Russia's 6-day rail sprint to Xinjiang turns every refrigerated wagon into a moving billboard. Why wait for Washington? If tariffs snap back to triple digits in August, U.S. beef sales could plunge another 20%, dumping excess supply onto an already saturated domestic market, just as feed costs spike on dry weather corn. It's the 2012 squeeze all over again. Right now, $500 million of American beef is thawing at Chinese ports, while Russia carts off the $1.2 billion prize. This trade war turned every shipping container into a ballot box for rural America, and the vote is drifting east. If Washington keeps swinging the tariff hammer, Asia's biggest dinner tables may stay set for rubles and yuan for the next decade. But one smart quarantine deal and a digital yuan settlement could flip 150,000 tons of beef right back onto Chinese grills before winter hits. So what's the smarter play? This was just the beginning. Hit that subscribe button and buckle up. Digital Garage has so much more in store.